Welcome back to Pax Europiana, to this time about discussing Albanian tourism. It's very important, this has a great future, this country in the tourism industry. No doubt, the sea is very beautiful. It's amazing. That's the tourist bay. It's very beautiful. That's the Hall of Tourists here, the main part of the promenade. It's well renovated. It's not completely finished, but it's really looking very nice. I walk there, make a so-called Giro every evening, and it's very, very beautiful. But there are some things I would like to share with my friends here in Albania, with the decision makers and all investors, and also the donor community about the tourism sector in Albania, which I think has to change and has to improve. Because I'm coming back now basically after 7 years. I left in 2013. I was a bit here actively, I have also invested in Albania, and I'm really, I think, relatively well aware about it. I've published also many articles about Montenegro. And I know the Austrian tourism sector, how we developed very well. And I think it's very meaningful for Albania to learn from the Austrian tourism development success and also to change some things. I would like to address some particularities. The most important is also the role of the owners in the restaurants and in the hotel industry. In Austria, we have mostly family-run, family-owned properties who are like hotels, and they are basically the core of our tourism industry. Here also it's owners, obviously, it's private owners. All of them have apartments or restaurants are private owners. But what I see is they don't work themselves in the tourism industry. They have invested, mostly it's rich families, landowners, or people in whatever kind of business. They invest as an extra business in the summer in the holiday resorts. They build very beautiful places, but you always can go into an Albanian restaurant and you order a hotel anywhere. I've been to many, and you always see the main table is reserved for the owner's family. They are sitting mostly then on the left corner or the right corner in a central position, and there the wife of the owner, the real investor, is then controlling the situation, talking with special guests, but not really working. In an Austrian hotel, you see it very differently. We have hundreds and thousands, I would say, owner-run restaurants. This is the normal way. There's also hotel chains, international one, but the normal Austrian family-run businesses is that the whole family works intensively for the service of the customer. They work in the kitchen, they work in the service, they work everywhere. This is a very hard job. I know some of the families from Alba, from Upper Austria. Also a lot of immigrants have gone into that way. I know one Egyptian in our Eidenberg, we go there regularly. In Vienna, many of the Balkan people have successfully opened that kind of line of business. They put in very hard work themselves, and they are also successful. And after 20 years, they come back and have their property owned. They have also an apartment probably, and they have made it in the restaurant business, because that's the way the families put in hard work themselves, and then they can succeed. Unfortunately, in the Albanian reality, I don't see it exactly like that. I see it more that the rich elite is taking the properties, and then they are sitting there and not really working on the thing, but maybe carrying the responsibility on their shoulder, having of course invested, but they are basically not moving the whole day. They are sitting at this main table. They invite some of their friends, because it's basically their own holiday as well, and that's basically their contribution, and they supervise and they shout with the staff when they don't perform. That's something, there's some economic explanation behind it. It's obviously very expensive, the land, the investment capital, but it's also a little bit, of this cultural division in Albania between the working class and the owning class. It's a bit of a problem, but it's also maybe the incentives in the tourism industry, because so much extra capital is moving in. There's not so real a business case in. It's more a pleasure for the rich families to have additionally a hotel. And so it's a bit problematic, and this I think has to change, and to be also in the tax law, in the worker code, and in many other areas, and really look at Austria, how we did it. It's of course, hard work then for the families, but that's the way also for a long-term success, and also for people from the middle class to have the opportunities to grow up by tourism. The idea of tourism investments, as you see in all over Germany, Austria, Switzerland, is very open for a lot of the people from Kosovo, Albanians. They run many of the restaurants in Switzerland, and also in Austria there is a lot of Croatians, Bosnians, Serbs, Kosovo Albanians in the tourism industry. And so it is in Germany. They sell the ice cream and they get, united as a family, successful. Yeah, that's the idea basically, and the idea is not that the rich get richer. The same is also true in the second aspect I would like to talk. It's a bit about emancipation and the role of women. But here in Albania, and also to some extent in Kosovo, and to some extent even in Montenegro, you see that there is no female workforce in the service industry, in the tourism area. Everybody is young men who work in that sector, and that's something which is depriving, obviously, then young women from this kind of important service sector in the tourism industry, in the hotel industry, in order then they are not having these commercial possibilities because they are basically excluded. Yeah? I don't say that every man should work in a construction sector or in this hard labor, in the car mechanic. There can be, of course, all genders can work everywhere. But to exclude women from the restaurant and service sector in the hotels and in the bars, that's really something very astonishing. And there might be cultural reasons, but it's not connected with Islam, to my best knowledge, because it's not that in Albania you see a lot of women driving very big cars or small cars. Women are very powerful in the family, and it's their own property, and there is not a discrimination against women in general, in my best view. Maybe there's maybe a lot of issues there. There are more competent people than me to talk. I'm an economist. But I see it's simply astonishing that you see only men bringing you in the restaurant the food and the drinks and the coffee. You hardly, I think I will make a test, you hardly see any woman in that jobs. And obviously many of just the middle class women in Austria, when the parents are not rich landowning or company owners, and they have to work during their studies, for example, my wife has also done it, and everybody, basically it's very common to earn your living as a part-time waitress. Yeah? It's something totally normal in America and in the European Union, and here this is somehow not possible for whatever cultural reasons or family reasons or whatever economic reasons, and that's something which is really very astonishing for me and very peculiar in Albania and in Kosovo. It's a bit different in Macedonia, much different actually already, and in Montenegro you also see, often the woman in the restaurant just, like a hostess bringing people to the place, but everything in the work and delivering the food to the table and asking people for drinks is somehow only for men. I don't really understand the context, but I think here for the donor community and also for the government, there is a huge gap in employment, a gender gap in employment in the tourism industry, and that needs to be addressed systematically and give women opportunities as well in this key sector. And that is, I think, very normal in the European Union, and I think it will be also making, often they might speak English better. It's also one issue is the language. I speak some Albanian, I can cope, but there is of course a big language gap in Montenegro and in Kosovo and in Albania. Less in Macedonia, it's already much more developed, and Macedonia and Montenegro are more developed than Albania and Kosovo. There is no doubt about it, but they can also lift Albania up because it's this strategic country here, and this has this beautiful access to the beach and all these other things which are so important. Yes, about the currency I have already talked. Yeah, it's something also for the tourism industry. All the new lake, the lake is the currency here, and they have the old lake. That means 10 plus. So they talk in millions or in thousands. When in reality we are talking about the beach a day, and the beach costs 4 euros in a small beach here. 4 euros the sun and the 2 shares. It's very cheap compared to Italy. Even in Montenegro you pay often 15 euros now a day for such a beach access, and here it's still for 4 euros. So it's obviously very cheap. And obviously that's first of all, the problem is that it's confusing with the old and new lake. Secondly, the euro would obviously make things more expensive, but also the income would rise. You know, it would just adjust to the European normality of prices and this very peculiar system where the ones who are very rich here, the ones who control the property sector and the retail sector and the opportunities in the export industry, they are super rich, and the most of the population is very poor, and it's very much connected to the currency policy of your country. Yes, I'm online. Just I will check always because my battery was full and my phone was too much already. Yes, so that's also very important, the currency issue. Then we come as well to the infrastructure. I've been yesterday again to the other side of the bay. The road is of course still the dirt road of the past. Yeah? And this is the infrastructure. Also the electricity is a problem. In Montenegro recently as well, many power shortages. Here it seems to be more, I didn't have any power shortages here. In Montenegro there are still. So I'm sure they are also here. Let's wait for it. I will report on that one. But the water infrastructure, obviously a big problem. The beaches still not having all showers, yeah? And no changing cabins. Yeah? And then the wastewater situation in tourists, of course, always a big issue. I hear some things have improved. I don't see it very well. I've not been in the more problematic areas in the south in Kavaya, where there was the direct access to the sea of all the dirt water. Maybe that is now working better. I can really not verify it. But the infrastructure, honestly, as I see it today in the road, and also in most of the other services, is unchanged since a decade ago when I was living here, and I could really, it's a bit improved, yes, some cleanliness, it's a bit, more systematic, but a minimal improvement when it comes to the bigger picture in terms of infrastructure in the beach areas. Maybe there is of course some progress with the Flora bypass. I have not been, but this whole infrastructure issue is of course a major one, and after a decade you would really expect much more progress. Let's come also to the pricing. It's one favorite topic of mine, is the pricing of public services. I've made this specific video about the building maintenance system. That's of course a huge problem because the apartments are not gaining in value. They are basically losing because the maintenance is not provided. The collection of all the public costs, which are so many, from energy to waste collection, is not guaranteed via the cadastre as we do it in Austria. And then it's basically not happening because the ones who are paying seem to pay for the rest. So they are like the fools. So they don't like it, and so that's a big problem obviously, and it needs to be imposed on the population by law, and then in a broad coalition, because of course it's very unpopular to pay. Also in Austria we don't like to pay for waste collection if we had the choice, but we don't have, it's the law. Anyhow, that's something which is really very important, also for value creation, for investment in the property sector, and also for the general level of hygienic, and also for the pleasure. Because when the moment you go out of your luxury apartment, step in the street, you are seeing a lot of garbage, and that's of course not very good. Let's come to the pricing of parking. Because you see at the beaches a lot of illegal parking. In the streets you can park for free, and the parking in these tourism areas at the Adriatic is of course a big mess. How to do it? Of course you have to cost it, you have to price it. It's not a secret. In Montenegro now, in most of the places, you have to pay 2 euros per hour. It's quite expensive in the more luxury places, the rest maybe 1 euro, but you have to of course pay for parking. Parking in a tourist center in the summer must be obviously payable, also in Tirana, or everywhere basically. Free parking can be provided by the property owners as part of the rental agreement or for hotel guests, but everybody else at every beach has to pay. I mean, in Montenegro they have understood it now, and I pay when I go 3 euros at my beach there in Morin. And here, you can go and park for free if you find a place. And everybody parks very wild at the street corners, and it's a complete mess. Yesterday I was driving from this other beach back by this gentleman, and he gave me a ride. And I was thinking I was dying twice. I got my whole phobia against driving in Albania was when I was in front of the other car crashing and nothing happened. So, but this feeling is quite dramatic, and you see obviously there's no place to drive because there's illegal parking of the people going on the beach, and this is not the way to do a serious effort. Yeah. I'm now 14 minutes. Okay, it's real, my video is working. So that's important. It's also important, you know, friends of mine ask me, what about buying a beach house here in Albania? Obviously, it's much cheaper than in Croatia and Montenegro. You can have a nice penthouse apartment for 110,000 euros. I mentioned it already. You can have a villa for 250, where you can have that in the world. It's absolutely amazing. But obviously then comes a lot of issues like unregulated questions of the land usage, of the building permits and so on. And then also when you have apartment, you are a co-owner of a unit, of a condominium, of a house, yeah? And you have all these issues again. So then that's why it's so cheap, because no international capital is moving in. And in fact, all the poor people who have invested here, they are like, their value doesn't really increase, because the property prices here in Durrës are the same like they were 10 years ago. I could buy an apartment for 1,100 with sea view. I can buy an apartment for euros 1,100 with sea view. It has not really increased in a decade where we printed a lot of money, where a lot of things have happened, where Albania moved forwards to the EU, you know, but the property prices have not increased. And why? Because there is these issues with property ownership, with transparency in the cadastre, with the property maintenance system. There is these issues with the building permits. There is the issues also that, you know, there is many unregulated things still happening. And then everybody says, okay, maybe good for me, yeah, I have one place for me. If I love Albania, but as an investment where you really buy properties to rent it out, you know, it's obviously I can rent a penthouse for 60 euros and everybody thinks I'm a fool that I pay so much. Because here you can have a room for 20 euros, and you can have, for 30 euros, you can have a very nice apartment already per day. And hotels are also not very expensive, yeah. So there is no real value increase because the system is not working, which is underlying property system, and also the tourism industry, obviously, depending very much on that one. Good, yeah. So what else to say on the tourism? Yeah, I think I covered some of the particularities. What is important, obviously, is also the infrastructure in the institutions which is supporting industry. Not just marketing it nicely and branding, but you need also this soft infrastructure of communal organizations, yeah? The restaurant, food providers to work together to learn and to train, the educations and skills providers to have their own association, also like a trade union for the people working in the tourism sector, that also their rights are represented. Yeah? That's of course a wild idea, I might think, but this is all needed. And then also associations that certain regions have a business improvement district, yeah? Not just Durrës itself with this pedestrian zone, which I am calling for, but you know that all the regions, the small quarters, they work in associations like we have it valley by valley in Upper Austria. All the Alpbach Valley, the Kitzbühel Valley and all the Ötztal Valley, they have associations working together, having this feedback loop with the public authorities, how to really collect money also for tourism taxes, also how to work together then to improve the valley. Here, obviously, beach by beach, the owners must have formed an association to see that their aspect of the city, their kind of 5 hotels and 5 apartment blocks really work better, and that there is a cleanliness, there is also public support and investment issues to be addressed in the winter. How we do it? We have, of course, the main season in the winter, but we have also managed to have a summer season in the Austrian Alps now quite successfully with luxury hotels, with hiking, mountain tourism. It's very beautiful. So what is going on? In the off seasons, in November and in March, April, or let's say April, May, then obviously the owners make some holiday, but also they prepare for the season. And they prepare by meeting together. Obviously they are also very stubborn people in Tyrol, for example. My best reference is Tyrol here, or Upper Austria in the tourism area, but they have learned to work together with the help of the public authorities, and then they have all these beautiful associations which make everything so much easier. Because you work together, of course you compete. Every hotel is a competitor. Every hotel, every apartment owner is a competitor to the hotel industry, and so on and so on. But you see that there is some kind of cooperation necessity, And once you cooperate and once you work together as a kind of small destination association, something gets really much better, because you see, how can I market Zorilla, how can I market Ceres, yeah? How can I market Golem, that's the touristic villages here, the villages at the coast, and then they compete, but also they cooperate then as a whole of tourists together. And then they address the issues, they find solutions, and then they implement it together with the local and the state authorities, yeah, when it comes to the various levels of responsibility. National marketing, obviously, and infrastructure is maybe a national government issue, or the municipal infrastructure. And then you gradually improve a touristic destination, and you think, where's the issues, where the guests happy. Who cares here for the guests, actually? Is there anybody? Of course, your owner, where you buy, and they're all very friendly. You see, the Albanians are very friendly people to the foreigners, yeah? You have this hospitality code and this friendship, and they are welcome. That's very good, But, there's also no kind of institutional interaction. Have you been satisfied? Was it your expectations? Will you come back again? Will you post positively about the destination? And so on and so on. There's no kind of feedback. We all do this in Austria. I get regular